I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, degenerate sleuths of the night. We gather to boldly go where others have refused. Welcome to the DT show, you salty mofos.
A man accused of killing 4 college students is behind bars, and he has ties to northeastern and central Pennsylvania. State police say 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger was arrested this morning at a home in Chestnut Hill Township.
I can't find any case law that would support that idea. That somehow a warrant would be needed for DNA left at a crime scene.
We are expecting to learn more about the allegations against the girlfriend of a Boston police officer who was found unresponsive in the snow Saturday morning. I-Team sources say Karen Reed was in a relationship with John O'Keefe. She's facing charges including motor vehicle homicide and manslaughter.
So, the Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern. The implications of that information may have profound effects on this defense and defense counsel.
So, get your popcorn ready and your choice of drink. Get your butt on your seat. Like, comment, and subscribe for a treat. Here we go. It's time for the show. The Drunk Turkey Show.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. I'm Daniel, and today we got an interesting show for you, in my opinion. I always say that, but I hope it is at least. We're going to be talking about Dr. Catherine Ramsland, renowned world forensic psychologist. I believe right now she's studying in DeSales University, and she's been the subject of conversation in the Bryan Kohberger case here recently. Not just because of her ties as his former professor, but she's come out she was been referenced in a book by Howard Bloom, where there's been some accusations that maybe perhaps she's writing a book, maybe she's helping a sister, maybe some other things. I think also I had an interview. I had an interview with Steve Goncalves, father of Kaylee Goncalves, and he had mentioned some things about Dr. Catherine Ramsland as well. Well, she has responded to my guest today, which is Dr. Jamie Vona. Welcome to the show, Jamie. How's it going, doctor?
Hi, everyone. Welcome.
And so,
good. How are you?
I'm doing well. And it's been a long week. I'm glad it's Friday, needless to say.
I agree.
And so, as I was saying, Dr. Catherine Ramsland, she is a former professor of Bryan Kohberger's. She has worked on several books, and I guess you guys have, well, I'll let you explain it. You reached out to Dr. Ramsland, is that correct?
Yes, I did. So Dr. Ramsland is a colleague of mine. We both are educators in higher education. And I wanted to make sure that I spoke out for her. And again, not in any way, either way, but she can speak on the case. And there's certain things that I would, be able to say on her behalf, if you will. But she's a colleague of mine, and she's very well respected in the field. She's been around for decades. She has a very extensive scholarship, and she's on her 73rd book, and I believe she has 3 more in the making. So that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, no, definitely so. And some of these books that she has written have been referencing, or a lot of these books that she's written have been referencing some high profile serial killers. And I think that she has a course called Violent Crimes. And I believe this is the course in which Bryan Kohberger took. There are some books that are, I want to say, required out of that classroom that she has written that are read. Howard Bloom brought up some of those books. One of them called Inside the Minds of a Serial Killer, Why They Kill, Confessions of a Serial Killer, The Untold Story of Dennis Rader, The BTK Killer. And one of the things that I noticed is that a while ago, there was a book found in one of Bryan Kohberger's, I think is his vehicle, and there was a page underlined. And a lot of people have speculated which book it could be and this, that, and the third, but we do know that he had these books because he took this course. And I wanted to read a passage out of page 118 of one of these books, and I wanted to get your opinion from it. This is from Inside the Minds of a Serial Killer, Why They Kill. Page 118 goes, "The killing thus provides a sense of vitality, which produces euphoria that is followed by a sense of calm and a relief from pressure. Then when the murders are covered in the media, it affirms their sense of power." I'm not saying this is what was highlighted or not, but it's just kind of odd that that's on page 118. And well, this was a very high profile crime that Bryan Kohberger is alleged to have committed. Any thoughts to that book and that passage and potentially that being something that he may have had in his possession?
So I think he probably had a few of her books in his possession. One, because he took her course, and I believe one of them is required for the course. So he would have at least one of them. The 118 reference, though, I feel like everybody that comes to me, they're like, there's this book and on page 118 or whatever the number is. But I feel like every one of them that somebody has brought to me could fit. So I would be hesitant to say like, oh, this is the one. But I did see somebody in the comments saying that you owe Dr. Ramsland an apology. And I just want to, before we go any further, let everyone know that Daniel means no disrespect to Dr. Ramsland at all. And she knows that. So I just want you to know that.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I don't think I said anything about Dr. Ramsland.
No.
Well, anywho, so I read Howard Bloom's theory on Dr. Ramsland, and one of the things that he says in here, and I wanted to clear this up right away too, because I don't think Dr. Ramsland at any way or in any way groomed Bryan Kohberger. I don't think she was teaching him how to commit a crime. I think she, in a way, is also a victim of Bryan Kohberger's manipulation and, probably a lot more. He's well, before we get into what Howard Bloom had to say and more into that, so you reached out to Dr. Ramsland, and what did you tell her exactly? Like, I mean, not exactly, but like you told her you were coming on the show. Is that correct? And that's
I did.
Yeah.
I did tell her I was coming on the show, and I did want to, clear up just in case that, that you're just putting the facts out there, and that if she, that there was no disrespect meant if she has heard it that way, let's just say. I do want to point out, though, before we go further, that when it comes to our students, okay, so I've been teaching for 20 years, and I teach psychopathology or abnormal psychology. It's known as different things depending on where you're at. And so did he, right? So I guess what I'm saying is that at any point, one of my students could go on to do something like this. And that doesn't mean that just because I've been teaching it for 20 years, multiple times a semester, that I would see it. People have to remember that if Bryan Kohberger is guilty, that he would have manipulated the situation, and he would have been good at that manipulation and at blending in as far as being a good academic and things like that. So I don't think that it's something where, like, even if I had him in my class, that I'd be like, oh, we need to watch out for that person, because that's not how it is. These people are the same as, a neighbor or things like that. So you might not realize it, is what I'm saying. Just like BTK, right? He slid in through, he was a security guard. He worked at his church. So it's not, we can't just look at somebody that we think is scary and be like, oh, that's the person, because that's not necessarily the truth. So I don't blame her for not realizing that she had him in her class type thing, if you will.
Right. Now, you reached out to her. You told her you were coming on the show. There were some things that were said. One of the things that you first clarified was the amount of books that she had written.
Yes.
How many books was it again?
So I'm reading right from it. She has written 73 books and she has 3 in the making.
Interesting. And
Yes.
and one of the allegations I think that was come out is that she is writing a book referencing Bryan Kohberger and or is helping his sister write a book. Did she comment on that aspect of anything?
She did. So she wanted to get across that she, and I'm going to say this correctly so that I don't misquote her, but she just says that, oh, okay, so one, she's not writing a book about, or she's not writing a book with Kohberger, nor is she helping anybody else write a book about Kohberger. However, I did read through the cracks a little bit, and I think we might show something a little bit later where she does say that when she does her autobiography, that she will probably include him within the autobiography, but she does not have a book deal with him. I also want to clear up that she says that she's heard that there's claims that she paid Dennis Rader by splitting the book profits. So the one book that you have up there with Dennis Rader, she wants to make it clear that she has never, ever, that Dennis Rader has never profited off of any books. And that if anything, the proceeds from his portion of the book have gone to the victims' families. So I just want to make that clear. And I also think, and I mean, don't quote me on this, but I almost think that there's a federal law that people like Dennis Rader and stuff, that they can't profit off of something like a book.
Yeah, no, I've looked into that as well. But let's be honest, when it comes to like Dennis Rader or even Bryan Kohberger, it's not like they're going to be able to spend any wealth they would have gotten. What they get out of it is fame. And this is a way of putting out their story, don't you think?
Absolutely. I do. So I totally agree with that. I do think, because I've thought about that too. And I'm like, okay, like what's it would definitely help with commissary and stuff like that, but they're getting more out of it. They're getting their story out there. But I will tell you that Dr. Ramsland won't even work with somebody unless she knows that they're willing or ready to work on themselves. Because the thing is with these type of individuals, they are highly manipulative, right? So I wouldn't just go into a jail and be like, I want to talk to you or you, because they're just going to tell me what they want me to know. So It's not unless she knows that the person, and even at that, she'll say that they will still try to manipulate some situations. And sometimes you do get manipulated, but then you take a step back and you reflect on the situation and then you go back at it again.
Did she mention anything about his presumption of innocence?
She did not, actually. She didn't say anything about, I mean, unless I'm missing it, I'm going to look again, but I don't think she said anything about his presumption of innocence. But she said about the number of publications, that was a big deal, and that the victims' families get a bulk of the proceeds. I can't make any other statements at this time. I don't know what else is being said. I appreciate you giving me the benefit of the doubt. So, and she's not able to be contacted at the moment. She's traveling for, business and stuff.
Right. No, yeah. And we spoke before, obviously, before the show about it.
Daniel and you guys have worked really hard on the show, just so that everybody knows.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Going into, though, Howard Bloom's theory, and as I said, Howard Bloom even brings up the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan, and that the person that attempted to do that was trying to do it for the love and affection of somebody that didn't know who he was. And I think it was Jodie Foster, the actress. And, so him saying that is basically him saying that Catherine Ramsland wasn't aware that Bryan Kohberger was going to commit this crime. I know he does say that, he emailed her before and after the murders. I know she didn't talk on that, but she said she wouldn't talk on anything about Bryan Kohberger, correct?
Yes, at least right now before the case. And let me tell you guys something. So her being silent is different than her evading talking about it. So I think that we're going to find, after everything is said and done, she could speak on her own terms. Obviously, I'm not speaking for her specifically, but I do know that this has been 2 years, right? So this is a long time. So it would have been really easy for her to jump in and be like, oh, that was my student and blah, blah, blah. But there's an ethical consideration there. So I believe that we shouldn't read into her not commenting as her evading, because it's not. If anything, it's the ethical thing to do as a professor.
But if you had a student and he committed a crime allegedly and was being charged with a crime, if you felt he was innocent, wouldn't you speak out and say something to that effect? Or, if you felt that maybe there's a chance he could do something, would you keep your mouth quiet?
Oh, Daniel, this is a hard question. If I see, this would be the thing though. So I have some students that take me 6 times. So I guess it would depend on how long do I know the student and what capacity do I know the student? Like, is this somebody that I'm recommending? So I guess I don't know that I would want to get involved either way. I would let the court system play out. And then now let me say it was like somebody I knew for years and years and years. And I knew that this person, I don't know, it would be hard, but I still think that I would try to get counsel on that from higher ups. And I would think that they would still tell me not to say anything publicly. Like, I could go to the police station and tell them what I know, but that I don't have to go on News Nation or on YouTube to tell other people, at least not until it's over.
And Tommy Clips saying, how would she know? I think she does have an opinion, and I think we're going to listen and actually hear her opinion here in a second. What do you think, though, before we get into Dr. Ramsland's actual words, because we do have a podcast that she was a part of not too long ago, and that we're going to hear her actually answer some of these questions as well through that podcast, like payment to victims, family members, et cetera, et cetera. But what do you think about the theory that Howard Bloom has? He's saying that the affection for Bryan Kohberger, it was his teacher, Dr. Catherine Ramsland. He was emailing her before and after the murders. He purchased most of his kill kit in Pennsylvania before he ever moved over to Pullman, Washington, and possibly before he ever met any of the victims. He already had the knife. He already had the mask. He probably already had the idea. He'd already been making contact with people on Reddit. What do you think about the possibility of him grasping Dr. Ramsland's attention as a potential motive piece here?
So this is the thing. I don't think there was anything there as far as her being part of his prototype or somebody that he was affectionate that way. I think if anything, he could have seen her as a form of, and again, this goes back to the very first thing I've said about this case from the beginning. He lacks an identity, in my opinion, you guys. So by doing this, he took a chance that he would gain attention. He had her as a teacher, and he has to know that she's written this many books and that, you know what I mean? He studied some of them. So in my opinion, again, even if he did do that, that was less about her and more about him. So that would be him. But I don't think that there's a sexual motivation with her or anything. I think if anything, it would be more of a fascination, oh, I could be CTK.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that aspect. I don't know if it's a romantic one either, but I think that it's interesting that would grasp, and I'm not going to play a lot of this. This was something that was sent to me. I'm not sure how much of this is clips from different documentaries, and so sometimes they get hit with a copyright, so I'm not going to play a lot of it. But apparently, according to this here, which talks about who Catherine Ramsland is, it's the co-ed killer who actually inspired Dr. Catherine Ramsland to go into the field of forensic psychology for the criminal mind. What do you think about that aspect, adding to the potential thought here of a motive? I mean, it's kind of what he did. He went in there. I think that the intention was two. Ed Kemper, he used to go in two in pairs. Maddie and Kaylee may have been the target. He went up to the 3rd floor. Remember, the 3rd floor bedroom to Kaylee's room was open. She may have left it open, or maybe Bryan Kohberger opened that door while he was up on the 3rd floor. Either way, that if he did in fact open that door, and that's the reason why it's open, then that tells me, there's no reason for him to go in there. It's not like he was chasing Xana down on the 2nd floor, so that means that his intention may have been also in that 3rd floor. Ed Kemper would take out 2 co-eds, 2 at a time, I believe, and then he I think she even goes on to talk about how he would, no, actually it's a different podcast that I was listening to about Ed Kemper, but he actually was thinking about doing a mass murder before, I guess he somehow turned himself in or something. I'm not too familiar with Ed Kemper that way, as far as how he got caught. But what do you think about that aspect, the co-ed killer aspect of it?
So remember we talked before on here on the live about the Bateman and stuff. I do think that he pulls from characters and again, a lot of these people are real life people. So just that one happens to be a character, but I think that he pulls from the different I don't know how much we say on YouTube, but from the different people, predators, there you go, from the different predators. And again, I think it all goes back to him building his own identity. So what he sees in those other predators. And I think that the sorority thing, if that really was connected to something, in my opinion, I would think that it would be more connected to a Bundy thing it could be both, but I see a lot of similarities with the Bundy thing. I just think that, again, he sees this as an opportunity. He has her as his teacher, so she knows of him, right? And he has no identity, and this gives him an identity. And then she could go on and talk about him and then teach about him, which keeps his legacy continuing far beyond his years.
Yeah, no, you make a lot of sense there. That definitely does make a lot of sense. Dizzy Wizzy comes in. I think I said that right. That video that I didn't play because I was afraid there could be some copyright into it. That's actually off of Desi's page here. It says, I feel so famous. Yes, from A&E and her podcast. I spliced a bunch of interesting points. Go check that out. It's very interesting. It's just because it's from A&E, I would definitely get copywritten. So I'm glad I didn't play it. Good to see everyone. Thank you, 49er Girl. All right. So this one, this is an interview that Catherine Ramsland did. This is Encounters with Killers, true crime author Catherine Ramsland. This is from Ashland Public Library, only 688 views. This was 3 months ago. And I think there's some interesting stuff in this podcast. We're going to start off and then I'm going to jump around a little bit.
In a way, this is about myself because I'm currently writing my murder memoir. And a lot of the things I'm going to talk about tonight are part of my life story. I have published 73 books. I'm on number 74 and 75. Most of them are kind of dark subjects, not all of them. I have one book with my horse, so there'll be another one. But this is about my encounters with killers, and I'm going to start. And there are some graphic photos, just so you know. I've tried to tone it down a bit. But I do police trainings and I do lectures. I'm actually going to be on News Nation tonight. I do a lot of consulting for media as well. And I'm currently working on a multi-part documentary on my latest book, The Serial Killer's Apprentice. So I've been in probably well over 200 documentaries over the past, I guess, 37 years that I've been working on this stuff.
Serial Killer Apprentice. Interesting.
I know. Did you see my face? I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's an interesting title of a documentary that she's going to be a part of, given the most recent, I don't want to say accusations, because I don't think Howard Bloom accused her of doing anything.
No,
but
he just speculated like a lot of people do. But I'm glad that we could correct the record so that it doesn't go off, offbeat, and that it goes right back to where it should be. So we're correcting the record.
Exactly. So let's and I wanted to point out that how many books that she says she's written and been a part of. And then she's working on a few. So let's move over a little bit, because here in this podcast, she does talk about Bryan Kohberger.
And then this will be sort of the last of my murder memoir. I had a student named Bryan Kohberger, who is currently the chief suspect in the quadruple homicide of the Idaho students. I will not take questions about this case because he was my student, but I will be writing about my experiences with him in my memoir.
So I know you said that he's not. This sounds like she's writing about him.
I was going to say I read between the lines pretty good on that email, right? Because like I said in the email, she says that she's not writing a book with him, nor is she writing a book with anybody else about him, but she doesn't necessarily say that she's not personally writing about him. So I'm not surprised that we'll see it in her memoir, but let's be honest, you guys. She's been teaching for decades, and she had I mean, if he is found guilty, that means she had a perpetrator in her class. So how could you not write that as part of your story?
Yeah, no, I agree. I
I
just
don't know if
thought
she'll
it would
write
have
a
been a
whole
little
book
bit more
about him.
clarified.
I don't know.
No, I know. It's just it sort of came off when you told me she's not writing about him or writing a book with him or helping anybody write a book about him. It just kind of came off that she's not writing anything at this time. But it just kind of seems like that's not the case. But you're right. You know, she's not writing a book about him either. This is a memoir of her and her experiences. And in there is a small piece that's going to be about Bryan Kohberger. So it's not necessarily a book like, for instance, The Confessions of a Serial Killer, the BTK killer. You know, that was a book that was dedicated to him. Do you think maybe that's what she meant?
I think that's exactly what she meant. And again, you guys, how do you write a memoir about your profession and everything that you've been through and your whole legacy and not add this in? That would be weird almost.
Yeah, no, it definitely would be. It's a book that I know I'm going to end up getting and reading because I want to know what it is that she says. What was her experience? I think she talks a little bit. She says she's not going to answer questions, you know, because he was a student. Do you think that might be a reason why she's not writing a book about him? But then again, she's writing a book, a small part of a chapter of a book that details him. So I guess it wouldn't really stop her from writing a full-fledged book, right?
So I was going to say, again, if we're reading in between the lines, she said at this moment.
That's true.
So that doesn't really say in like 5 years. But I didn't ask. And I don't think that was my place to ask. Who knows what she's going to do in the future? And that's her. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I have Howard Bloom on the channel and he's writing about this entire case. And so I don't think writing a book or any of those things is something that should be seen in a negative light whatsoever. And again, I don't think at this point there's anything like nefarious, you know, as far as like what she's done. I think everything has been Bryan Kohberger. Bryan Kohberger is the one that committed this crime.
Thank you. Let's put it back on him, you guys. Why are we blaming everybody else? Like, let's put it back where it should be.
Exactly.
I agree.
Let's listen to what else she said. She does kind of bring him up a little bit.
In my murder memoir, I had a student named Bryan Kohberger, who is currently the chief suspect in the quadruple homicide of the Idaho students. I will not take questions about this case because he was my student, but I will be writing about my experiences with him in my memoir. So there we are. Okay. My experience with murderers, they're more than this because I've written to many more, but these are the ones that I thought were really salient in terms of my understanding of the criminal mind and the influence they had on my fiction writing, the crime fiction series that I'm currently working on. So all of what I did in Ice Cream Man, In the Damaged Path, and in Dead Handed, the third one, came out of my work with these killers. So with that, I am going to allow you to ask questions. I think we're at the point where we can do that. I'm going to stop the share and go back to us being, here we are.
Thank you. What a life you have lived. I can't even imagine starting off with, I mean, you made it through, you know, cross country.
Yeah.
Here, so you have got, I'm going to say guts. I'm going to remind everybody to put their questions in the Q&A. I'm not going to open up the chat, as I had mentioned, because we'll just go with questions. So put your questions in the Q&A so I don't lose track of them. So I'm just going to go one after the other. Can you let us know how these encounters might have changed how you live? Because you mentioned that you've been threatened or at least scared on many occasions.
Obviously, I have taken risks in my life. I mean, if I was 18, I hitchhiked across country. Not many people do that. And I just bought a motorcycle and got on. So I guess I'm not as fearful or cautious in my life. But I would say, I mean, I know when I walk, if I'm any male from about age 5 on up, I will always look back behind me. I always watch to see if somebody wants directions. I will not get close to their car, will not open the door. It certainly has made me cautious. And, you know, and my students have grown cautious as a result of coming to my classes and learning, you know, just about the fact that, yes, some of these killers are incarcerated, but they have groupies. They have people outside who write to them, who are murderabilia freaks or crime junkies, as they call themselves. And those are the people who can be dangerous. So I think I take a fair amount of caution in what I do. I don't really talk that much about my private life to anyone. So it's changed me clearly, because so many of the killers I've encountered were ordinary people who passed as normal, who had families, who were educated, who you just don't suspect. You can't see it. Like, people ask me, how did I not see Bryan Kohberger right in front of me? Because the signs weren't there. It's always easy to look back in retrospect, but when someone's right in front of you, they pass because they're predators.
So they ask, why didn't you see Bryan Kohberger in front of me? And she says, in retrospect, it makes sense. Doesn't sound like somebody who's too convinced that he's not the guy.
So you think like that she does think that well, I see what you're saying. Yes. So this is the other thing I think we have to remember, that this was during online. So this was during COVID. When I taught during COVID, I still taught, right? But we did asynchronous online and we did synchronous online, just meaning I'm curious, did they have a weekly meeting where she was like on Zoom or WebEx with them to where she got to see her students, or did DeSales make it completely online, which would mean that you have so many things that you have to turn in, and then I grade them as it comes in, but we don't necessarily talk to each other like that throughout the semester. I think that really is going to make a difference, because how much did she actually get to observe of him? A lot of the things people say about him is that he stares, or he'll stand in front of the door so that you have to like walk around them. So all of those things weren't there because of COVID.
Right. But not all of his classes were online. His classes online were with Professor Bolger, I want to say is her name. She's the one that actually recommended him to the WSU PhD program. All of her interactions were online.
I thought hers was too.
I don't know. I'll be honest. I have no idea.
I'm like 90% sure.
I know that there's images of Bryan Kohberger online where he was writing in a book, and some other guy took a picture, and that was from DeSales, and that was in a classroom. So I know that some of them were in classroom, but I have no idea if she had him in his classroom or not.
And don't you think that would make a difference? Because that would matter how much she really, because you could also get to know somebody by the things that they turn in too, right? So people have to write reflection papers, and in psychology or criminology, a lot of it's going to be, how would you do the crime scene, or what would you think? So you can still get to know, somebody's psyche by reading these things. So maybe when she means in hindsight, now that the allegations are made, you could then go back and reread those things, but with a different lens. And then maybe with that new lens, be like, oh, maybe, where before she had no reason to read it with that lens. It could have just been somebody who was really good at this particular subject or something.
I think that there's a lot to that as well, but I wonder, because she says in retrospect, and I wonder if she's looked back and maybe have noticed certain things that maybe he said or comments he's made, or maybe perhaps something that aligns with the crime that he pointed out. Like, for instance, always check the back door, or the door that you think that the person came in and out of, because DNA would be left there, especially on the way out or whatever, because that's one of the things that I'm just using that as an example, because that's what he pointed out in his 2020 final writing about being an investigator, and what basically what an investigator would do. He really highlighted that point, and we find out that the backsliding glass door was left open, et cetera, et cetera. So, either something, just to me, that comment seems like she knows something. I'm going to rewind it so we can.
Well, wait, real quick, Daniel, you know what else is interesting? So when people turn stuff in, we got to read what he turned in. We didn't read what the professor's comments were back. So sometimes when my students write something, I'm like, oh, great point, but make sure you think about this, this, and this too. So I don't know this to be true, but I don't know how she couldn't go back and read, because I would want to know, what did I say to him too? Like, what are some of the comments I wrote on his papers? Like, do you know what I mean? I would think she would have had to have gone back and looked. The
one thing that makes me really wonder is, what did he say after the murders? You know what I mean? Did he talk about the murders to her? Did he know that it was going to spark her interest because what got her involved in this field was the co-ed killer? You know, I mean, those are things that are kind of making a little bit of sense when it comes to the motive theory that Howard Bloom had. And another question, I mean, if you have a guy, because power can do some things, right? You know, it's usually I don't want to sound odd or bad or ugly by saying this, but usually sometimes you see it the other way. You see this 60, 70-year-old man with a lot of power and a young 20, 21, 22-year-old, 28-year-old woman by his side. You know what I'm saying? So is it possible that to Bryan Kohberger, she was like this powerful woman that he couldn't get?
In my honest opinion, that's usually like very one-sided. I feel like you don't always see it the other way. I mean, we do see some cases.
Oh, I don't think it was reciprocated. I'm just saying.
No, not like that. I meant in society. Oh gosh,
Okay.
I'm so glad that you just corrected that, because that's not what I meant. And somebody would have run with that and thought that's what I meant. I meant in society. It is like we don't see that as much where we see someone. So I think if anything, the connection, if there is one, it would have to be about the identity and her giving him an identity through writing.
Right. That's possible too.
Because he didn't know that we were all going to be talking about this. Do you know what I mean? So to him, he might have thought that she is his way of getting in the public eye. Who knows?
I don't know. I think part of who he chose and the amount of victims that he chose, I think he would have known that this was going to turn into a high-profile crime. He had, what was it? Illusions of grandeur, I think is what he wrote down. You know, those type of things lead me to believe that he was trying to be a prolific, or at least create a prolific crime that was going to go down in the history books as some sort of unsolved murder.
And just in case people don't know what a delusion of grandeur is, it's the thought that you're grande, right? Big. So it's the thought that you're bigger than what you really are. But he said that he had delusions of grandeur. So the fact that he knew that it was a delusion and that it might not be real, that was interesting to me. But these are all signs of narcissistic personality, just so people know, in my opinion.
Well, that's also, you know, we're also taking for granted that he understood what that meant. He may not have understood what the term meant and reason why he said it. You know what
True.
I mean? You know, he may have had the thought of being great and
I
just
see.
use the term. You know what I mean?
I see. Yes.
All right, let's listen to what Doctor said one more time, and then I'm going to go a little bit further, and then we'll pause it, and then we'll go to another spot.
Me clearly, because so many of the killers I've encountered were ordinary people who passed as normal, who had families, who were educated, who you just don't suspect. You can't see it. Like, people ask me, how did I not see Bryan Kohberger right in front of me? Because the signs weren't there. Mm-hmm. It's always easy to look back in retrospect, but when someone's right in front of you, they pass because they're predators. Mm-hmm. And they are very vigilant for their opportunities and their advantages.
Mm-hmm. Can you just remind us what show you were going to be?
So they pass because they're predators and they're very vigilant about their opportunities. She sounds like he was manipulating her and the situation.
And I think that that's like important to point out, that even she could recognize, right, that somebody else, even though, you know, that she didn't necessarily see him that way and that he could have manipulated her. So like you were saying in the beginning, we should really be seeing her more as, like, not more as, but like she could have been a victim of his as far as him setting it up or him seeking her out as a teacher and stuff like that.
Oh, I definitely think that that's a high possibility.
And I'm
if
glad
you had
that
to take a guess one way or the other, do you think he sought her out because of this, or do you think there's a potential that maybe getting involved in the field brought it out of him?
Oh, probably a little bit of both. So he probably was into the field and stuff, but then, and you have to remember that he's from Pennsylvania. I'm from Pennsylvania, right? So DeSales is in Pennsylvania. So it's not like he went, you know, to Idaho or Washington for that. Like, he stayed in Pennsylvania. So how much of that was about the location? How much? So I really don't know that answer because I don't know him. But one of the things that I think that is real important that she pointed out and I pointed out is that these people look like your next door neighbor, right? So they look like ordinary people until they don't. And that's when you can look back and be like, oh, wait a minute. I thought that was a little bit weird when this or that happened, but I just kind of chalked it off as, and again, that's cognitive dissonance. That's when you have two thoughts about the same thing. So you could look back and see things. Just like if you found out tomorrow that I was a predator, even though I'm very empathetic and stuff, I'm sure there's something that I've said on YouTube that somebody could clip and be like, in hindsight. So I think we have to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Callie comes in saying that's concerning. She's always been about prevention. She didn't see the signs. How could we? That's one of the things, a lot of people look at Bryan Kohberger and they think he's innocent because they can't fathom the idea of somebody who turned their life around, who is probably in a situation, because I think a lot of people can put themselves in a situation where Bryan Kohberger was, a teenage young man having some issues, having problems with your parents. I mean, they don't know everything that was wrong with him, so they can just kind of put some of the issues that they had and look at them in retrospect and be like, man, if I was able to become a PhD student, I would never do something like this. And the thing is, they're not him. He's, in my opinion, got something wrong with him. But they can mask it. She didn't see it. There were some students at WSU that were, had some concerns. They created a Bryan tally. But she didn't see
it, didn't see it either, Daniel. So you have to remember, right? Like he's doing it. He knows when to behave, which is another reason that I don't think he has these disorders that they're talking about. Like to me, that's very calculated. So all the students see it, but the teacher never sees it, except for they did say he fought with the one teacher.
Yeah. His main teacher, he got into disagreement with him. They got into a verbal, I don't know if they got into it. I don't know if it turned physical, if there was a threat of physical, or if he just looked like he was going to do something. But I do know that they got into a very heated argument on multiple occasions.
I wonder if he challenged him.
Well, I know that there was a problem with, like, for instance, according to Howard Bloom's book, which he spoke with people that were close to, well, I mean, he doesn't say who his sources are, but he says there are, you can kind of read between the lines and figure out that they're either friends or family members of Bryan Kohberger's father. And, he mentions that, like, there was disagreements. He mentions the firing. He mentions, I think he calls them bratty kids, not, able to deal with the grades that they were given, that they were entitled or something to the effect of that nature. I'm assuming that that's probably some of the arguments he may have gotten with his professor. If you had a TA in your class and they were having some issues with grades, I mean, how far does it have to get before termination starts being a thing?
Oh, a lot. So first, there's probably students in the chat right now because they do see me as a role model or as a mentor to them. So I would never, I would want to try to work it out between us first. So the fact that this teacher, and that's the other thing I just thought about too, when he was a student, his teachers didn't realize these things, but in this position, he was like seen as a teacher, right? So I wonder if that extra power added to, do you know what I mean? So I wonder if that had an effect, but right?
Yeah.
Because now I'm above you for real. So, you need to listen to me.
And some of those people that have a problem with, like, getting bullied when they were younger and things of that nature, once they get a sense of authority, it can get to somebody's head, like, oh, they take it out on other people. And it seems like he had that type of personality. I mean, he was bullied when he was younger. He lost some weight. And from a lot of reports that are out there is that he became a bully himself. And so, in
his defense, I will say this. So when I was going through my doctorate program, that's like the only time in my life I've been teaching for 20 years. So that's the only time in my life where students were like you're grading like a little bit hard and stuff. And I had to reflect. Never once was like, nuh-uh, like do better or whatever. That's not how I answer. I reflected on it. And I was like, wow, they're right. So because I was in a doctorate program, here I am expecting them to know APA 7th editions. And it's like, they're still undergrads. But the problem was when he got the feedback, he didn't really take it, right? So that would be the difference where I got the feedback, I reflected on it, and I changed my my style after that. But
Yeah,
I will
no,
give
he
him
decided.
that that he might be thinking that they should be able to write as good as he can and stuff. That actually does happen a lot. It's more about the reflection and then being able to change as a result.
Mm.
And he didn't do
Yeah.
that very well.
Yeah, I think the result of a lot of the I guess those problems was a makeshift court or whatever where they could challenge Bryan Kohberger, the students, and apparently it didn't came out more awkward than anything else. I want to say thank you to used to be blah. Did I read there? Yeah, it's on my little screen, so it's kind of hard for me to see. Thank you for your 199 super chat, and then Mountain Mama coming in. Man, my screen froze here with her membership for 26 months, saying you're stuck with me. Thank you guys, I appreciate y'all. And then we have another one, a $5 super chat from Chelsea Empire, saying big up to you, bro. Keep landing, best in the game, no debate. Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so
really
much. Thank you.
You're
Thank
doing
you
a great
guys.
job.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so to me, I think that there's a little bit here that indicates, if I had to take a guess or had to put some money down on it, on one side, if I thought that Catherine Ramsland thought he did it or didn't do it, I'd be putting that money all the way to the side that said she thinks he did it. But that's just my opinion. No, nobody else's. Let me move this forward a little bit because there's some other stuff I wanted to play real quick.
There's some good stuff in this.
Yeah, I recommend going and listening to the entire podcast here.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Artworks comes in saying, Dr. Vona, by the way, or BTK seemed like a normal guy, family man, leader in the church, etc. He claimed he was under the spell of an X factor. Is that a common thread among certain serial killers? Do you think that, what do you think about that comment?
Well, I think if you look at like Ted Bundy too, right? He blamed pornography, and Stephen Stearns blames the 90s, that he grew up in the 90s and that the 90s had an effect. So I think that they just are trying, like some of them, it's a way to rationalize, but it's not real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not that it's not real. I'm sure some of these things obviously have an effect, but it's not a real like defense for, the X factor. Like, I don't think that Dennis Rader has a delusions or hallucinations or anything like that. So in that case, now, if he had, paranoid schizophrenia, which means that he would have positive symptoms of schizophrenia, positive just meaning added, not good or bad. So it would mean that he had delusions and hallucinations. I don't believe he does. So in that case, it would be an excuse. If he had, paranoid schizophrenia where he's having delusions and hallucinations, well, then it might be different. But I don't believe that he does. So in that case, I would say it's more of rationalization.
Interesting. Truth Exposed comes in with a $5 super chat saying, Dr. Vona, I'm so proud of your audio tonight. It is amazing tonight.
Thank you. I'm using my daughter's expensive laptop, and I'm realizing that maybe I need to get a new one for myself.
There you go. To me, there was this one case that I really thought kind of maybe made a little bit more sense. I know a lot of people looked at, for instance, BTK, Ted Bundy, and a bunch of other guys because they saw some similarities in what with this crime. And I think that, thinking about it, and even back early on in this case, when I brought this up before, I thought that he was taking pieces because he studied those guys, not necessarily because he had the same feelings as those guys. And there was another case that occurred where there was a filmmaker, and he was obsessed with gory films. And what he did was he wanted to film a murder, but instead of it being fake, he went on Craigslist, invited some men over, faking it to be a woman. They get there, then he knocked them out, and took their life, and filmed it. And to me, he wanted to feel what it was like to actually film a murder. I think that was more on the lines of what Bryan Kohberger's situation is versus him having some of the similar feelings as some of these other serial killers. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think I know what you mean. Can you, like, what do you?
Okay, so like for instance, BTK, that was highly sexually motivated. Ted Bundy as well. When it came to this, I can't remember his name for the life of me. He was a filmmaker, and he filmed gory stuff, but it wasn't enough. He wanted to film somebody actually dying. And
well, that would be like that God complex, right? Or which is the same thing as a delusion of grandeur.
Right. And so to me, I mean, when I saw Bryan Kohberger's like all these little similarities to these different serial killers, the age, the co-eds, the 4 BTK, his first murders were 4. Allegedly, if that was his first, 28, and he was 27. So I mean, there's a lot of similarities there. You know, where it's at, where it's located. Washington, he was in Washington State, kind of where Ted Bundy started his reign at Washington, in the state of Washington, not in the same school, obviously, but in the state of Washington. In fact, I think there was some speculation there that Ted Bundy may have started his reign of terror in Pullman, Washington, by taking the life of Joyce LePage. And I know a lot of people look at that and say, no, Ted Bundy didn't do it, but it doesn't really matter in this instance if Ted Bundy did it or not. It's if Bryan Kohberger thought Ted Bundy did it or not. That's the important part about it.
Perception's reality, right? So you guys, perception's reality, even if it's not real. So for example, if you and your spouse break up because your spouse spent all of your, savings on hookers or something, you're not going to tell your kid that, right? So you just say, we're splitting up, we still love you, we're still going to work together. But again, if the kid on Friday night is crying and is like, I know that dad left because I asked him to drive me to the movies too many times, like that's really real for that kid, even though it's not real. So that's what we mean by perception's reality, even when it's not real. So I agree with Daniel in that it's not about if it really happened, it's about does he think it happened?
Exactly. And so all those things told me that this guy was, maybe perhaps infatuated with those people, with those serial killers, but maybe not necessarily suffering from the same things that caused them to do what it is that they were doing. And I felt like this one guy who was a filmmaker who couldn't just handle making films about murder, he had to commit it, probably felt more aligned with Bryan Kohberger, who couldn't just handle looking at crimes, had to commit one. Does that make sense where I'm coming from?
Yeah, that makes more sense. So if you remember back in, I think it was his Tappa Talk, he talks about how he feels like a criminal, but he says, but where's my record? Or that's part of his rap song, one of the things.
Yeah.
But he says that, right? So I think that he already identifies in that sense as someone has a similarity, right? But he says, where's my crime? So eventually, if he is the one, this does play out to where he eventually has his crime, right? However, I do think that when it comes to him, we're going to see that this has to do, again, with a lack of identity and whether he pulled from these different perpetrators and predators to make his own identity. But I think for him, it's more about control and about his ego. And feeling like he's better than others. He's smarter than you. He's smarter than me. He's smarter than Dr. Ramsland. He got over on her. Again, this isn't real, but perception's reality.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think you actually have a very valid point there. I do think, and I think a lot of people thought this about him, is that he thought he was smarter than everyone. And it's a valid point. Yeah, he apparently so. He told his psychologist he's still going to be found innocent of this. So we'll see. What do you think about the fact that he doesn't want to let the state have a independent psychological expert evaluate him?
You want to know what that's about, you guys? That's because the defense gets to hire someone to say that he has autism and stuff like that, right? So if he gets an independent one, then that means that the state or the prosecution is not hiring the person to say anything. So that would mean that he's now at risk of somebody being like, you have a personality disorder, cuz like this ain't autism. This is so of course he doesn't want to do that because he doesn't want to take the chance that somebody else. Right now, the narrative is that he has obsessive compulsive disorder and autism. He doesn't want to change that narrative, at least not right now.
That's true. That is true. Do you think they could diagnose him? Do you think he could be afraid of another diagnosis that they may give him?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yes, I think, and if it's yes, that's what I'm saying. So as somebody that's independent or whatever, he would probably more than likely, in my professional opinion, would be diagnosed with a personality disorder as opposed to autism and obsessive compulsive personality disorder as opposed to obsessive compulsive disorder. The difference, a big difference there is, you guys, is that obsessive compulsive disorder, you do the obsessions, the thoughts and the behaviors, you do the behaviors to get rid of anxiety. With obsessive compulsive personality disorder, it's more of like a rigid type thinking. So it's a way of thinking, and it's not about anxiety. So that would be a big distinction between the two. But they do overlap. You know what I mean? So I think right now he has the diagnosis that he thinks is going to serve him best as far as this trial. But in reality, that's probably not the true diagnosis. And he's probably smart, hopefully smart enough to know that. And he knows that he'd be taking a huge risk.
Do you think, not saying that he has any of those things that you mentioned, but if a person had those things that you mentioned, do you think they could admit what they did?
On their terms. And if anything, they might want to it. So, okay, I think he's trying to see the process play out, right? Because let's just say somebody does find him not guilty. He then gets to go out into the public, become a professor, sue everybody for defamation, like all the things. So I think he wants to play it out and see if he's smarter than the system, right? And again, this is perception, not reality. However, if he is found guilty and like his appeals and stuff aren't going in his favor, at that point, it would not surprise me, and mark my words, I'm willing to bet on this one, that not only would he want to talk, but he would want to talk because he would want to point out that you were right about this, but you were off about that. And you were, you know what I mean? So he would want everybody to know, like, this is how I did it. And you're like, he would want to correct the record is what I'm saying. Because that would mean a lot to him, how he did this and stuff like that, if he's the person.
And who do you think would write that book?
I don't know. There's somebody out there, I'm sure, right? But it doesn't matter because the person that writes the book, it won't be able to.
Do you think that's why she said she's not writing a book with him, because he's not convicted?
I don't know that would change afterwards, especially because of in light of all the, not the controversy, but the things being said now. I don't know. I can't answer that, specifically for her, but I would say, I don't know that she would ever write one with him, but about him or as part of a chapter in her memoir. Absolutely. I think so. But I would hope in light of everything that she would stay away from writing something with him, especially because Daniel, again, you have to remember, if he does eventually tell his part of the story, again, it's going to be a manufactured part of the story, the part that he wants us to know about, right? So it's not until somebody's ready to self-reflect and really work on themselves that I think Dr. Ramsland or anybody in our position would even consider speaking to them. And I don't think he's there.
Interesting point. All right, let's play this clip here.
Gianna asks, what do you think motivated you to go into this line? And how do you not get weirded out from the horror? But additionally, Stephen asked earlier about treating serial killers humanely or as humans. And I'm wondering if those two questions go together, because you're not weirded out by it. You can treat them as human beings.
I'm weirded out.
Oh, you are?
For sure. It's creepy hearing some of the things they've done and thought about doing in their fantasy life. But they are human beings. And if we treat them as if they're not, we are not making ourselves safer. So somebody has to go in and look at the complexity of who they are and how they got to be the way they are. And that it helps with intervention, treatment, spotting things in childhood. If we didn't dissect some of these killers, we wouldn't know things that we know now that are helpful. So, but that doesn't mean on a personal level, I'm not creeped out, because I am.
Can we pause it for a second?
Yeah.
Kelly Dime brought up before, I believe that was the name, about, what did she say exactly? Pretty much Catherine Ramsland just validated what she said. You put it up before. I just lost it, but she was right. So Kelly, if you're listening, you were right about what you said. I just don't remember exactly what it was.
That if she's about prevention, and that if she can see it, and how can we?
So isn't this a little bit like ick, because she's talking here about how we have to talk to them so that we can learn how to spot things and be able to prevent it. The problem is, you guys, is that somebody in this position, like a BTK or a Ted Bundy, they usually slide through and they know how to manipulate. So they've learned along the ways One of the big things that they do is they mimic you. So, however, if you're speaking with your hands, they'll speak with their hands. If you're smiling a lot, they'll smile a lot. So a lot of it, they're all different. They're not all the same. So I feel like that's kind of a hard thing to say, especially given the fact of what just happened about not being able to spot it, right? And what Kelly said. But I still think that it's worth studying, because I do think that developmentally that there are things along the way. For example, to be diagnosed with antisocial personality or sociopathy, psychopath, you have to have conduct disorder before the age of 15. So that is something that we see. However, not everybody that's a psychopath is going to become a predator, and not all predators are psychopaths. So it's all very different, and it's kind of hard to say that we're just going to, where like with other offenders, there might be some commonalities. There's not as many in this case. You might see like, commonalities amongst like sexual motivations, things like that. But as far as being able to spot someone and be like, oh, we need to watch out, other than that conduct disorder, because again, conduct disorder means an antisocial. If you just think of it, it's anti-society. So anti-rules. So I'm going to overstep the boundaries because I think I can, or I don't really care about your boundary type thing. So that would be our biggest red flag. But other than that, I think it's kind of hard because they're all very different.
Yeah. One thing that I left this, I wanted to highlight this because she brings up the value in talking with these people and trying to figure out, to be able to pick up those clues. But, she's in a very tough situation. I mean, it's a double-edged sword, no matter which way you look at it. You want to get the information about, from them, but there's a little bit, they get fame off of it. You want to, oh gosh, man, I had this. So you want to be able to teach people what to look for, but then you also attract people like Bryan Kohberger so that they can learn from those things. So it's a very double-edged sword.
It really is.
Place to be in, and it must be very difficult to navigate through that.
It is. I teach about eating disorders, and I have to be very careful when I'm teaching about eating disorders that I don't give somebody in my class that might have an eating disorder ideas. So there is a huge balance that you have to, because some of the things you have to teach because you need your students to look out for these things. And then other things you're like, did I just give somebody in here with an eating disorder like a playlist on what they should do next? Like, because that's not my purpose, nor is that what I want to do.
Exactly. It's a very difficult situation to be in. And, I think that in the end, I don't think her heart is in the wrong place. I think, this is a very touchy situation. You know what I'm saying? And she talks about victims' family members and stuff in here about not really, because talking with a lot of victims' family members, because it's tough. It's tough. When I was a police officer, it's one of the toughest things you have to do is talk to a family member of a crime.
I do not envy that.
Yeah. I had one guy, I felt so bad, guy had so this guy had this, I don't want to say his name. I'm just going to use a random name, Robert Woods, who ended up being a guy that the Steelers signed earlier. So not that guy, not the wide receiver for the Steelers, but I'm just going to use that name as a fake name. Sure. I got a call for a guy that his dad died in Chicago at the hands of somebody else by a murder. And so I was supposed to go in and notify this guy. And so I went to the house that was on file on his driver's license. Or actually, I get to the address that they gave me. I didn't check his driver's license. I probably should have in retrospect. But, I get there, knock on the door, and I speak to Robert Woods. And he tells me, I told him, hey, are you Robert Woods, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah. And apparently, and I told him, hey, your father died. And he says, oh, I don't care. I haven't seen that guy since I was like 2 years old. I'm like, oh, okay. And I was talking to him a little bit. And as I'm about to leave, he notices that it says like Robert Woods, like the third or something of that nature. And he's like, hold on, let me see that real quick. And I turn around, he's like, oh man, that's not me. That's my nephew. And so at that moment, he realized that his brother died, which was weird because they had like the same name. But I think it's because I think his dad had like separate families or something. I think that's why he didn't know him.
Isn't that
but
like
he was, huh?
George Foreman. Didn't he name all his kids George Foreman?
Yeah, it was kind of something similar to that. And he's like, yeah, his nephew was living there, but he hadn't lived there in about like 4 or 5 months. And so he was real heartbroken about it and just taken back because he realized that his brother actually had lost his life and not his father, who he didn't know. And he was close with his brother. And so, the questions come through, why them? Why did this happen? And, those are the questions you can't answer. You just got to give them the right information, where to call and where to go. And you be as empathetic as you possibly can. But, it's tough sometimes,
I couldn't do that. I would imagine that you guys in that position would need to talk to somebody at some point about that. That must be like a lot to carry. I don't know. My best friend was murdered when we were 29, and he was an only child. And the story of like the mom said, like, when the knock came on the door, like when you see that it's the police and it's the middle of the night, she's like, I knew before I answered the door that something really bad happened, because they don't just show up in the middle of the night. And I'm like, I do not envy that.
No, not at all. Not at all. Pets Left Behind leaves a $2 super sticker. Thank you so much. Chelsea Empire says, when he said, am I the only one? I don't even know why anyone outside of this channel thinks he's innocent. He's cooked. What did you think about that? Did anybody else get arrested?
Ted Bundy say that?
I don't know if it was Ted Bundy. I think it was a different serial killer that may have said
but
that.
Somebody did, right? So if we're going on the theory of him not having an identity, but finding an identity through other predators, then that would make sense that he would borrow something like that. And Jeff H has said too, and I saw him on here, his sister, the slasher movie that she did, apparently she says something, and Jeff H is not known to be a liar, so I take his word, but apparently she says something in the, maybe he can tell us what it is, in the movie that was close to, don't worry, I'm here to help. That would be crazy if
I need to watch that movie. I gotta be honest.
Me too.
I need to watch it. That is, I need to watch that movie because, what do you think? Do you think, does that all does everything kind of align to somebody that has no imagination? I mean, it seems like he's copying
he has
everything.
He has an imagination. That's the problem, is that they often don't know the line between fantasy and reality. Not that they don't know the line, but they cross the line between fantasy and reality. So I do think he has an imagination. He just acted on it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it just kind of seems like everything that saying things, copying movies,
finding an identity.
Yeah. You're right. Let's listen. I got 2 more clips up here, and thank you to Curly Girl for being the newest member. I do have in the I have it posted up already on the community page, the newest link for the Discord. Make sure you guys go and check it out. It's for members only.
And please make sure you go subscribe to me, everyone. That would be amazing.
Yes, let's go get subscription.
I need to get to 1,000. I'm so close.
Let's get there, guys. Let's get there. All right, let's play this one.
Just get paid to talk to you.
Get paid to talk to me?
Right.
No. Oh, no, I know what you mean. No, in fact, the victims' families get the proceeds, most of the proceeds from the Raider book. Henley doesn't give him nothing. I certainly didn't pay Kemper anything, or Collins. No, I've never paid for anybody to talk to me that I know of.
It makes sense.
I can't afford it.
Well, I mean, we all hear about, the popularity or the media attention that people, and that do these things get, and somehow that's a high for them. So do they make money off of it? That's, I guess, my thinking is.
Dennis Rader has what he calls oil wells. These are people who give him money. Because they want things from him. They want him to sign stuff. They want him to make little art pieces for them. So there are murderabilia collectors who do send money in to these killers, and so some of them do make money off of it.
Did she say murderabilia? That is insane.
Oh, it's a real thing.
Oh my God, I didn't know any. I mean, I'm new to I know I've been covering the Bryan Kohberger case, and I've been doing true crime now for like 2 years, but I've only done a few cases. I didn't realize that there was things called murderabilia, and that people were having serial killers make things.
So it's part of the way to get around that law that you can't profit from things like book deals. So if I just become a friend of yours and I just start putting, filling up your kiosk for the commissary, you might then draw me a picture. So we didn't really say, can I buy a picture from you? But it's more of like, but then you wind up getting murderabilia. And that's exactly what it is. And there are people out there that will spend so much money on this stuff. It's like a little bit scary.
That's weird. That's weird. I mean, it's never crossed my mind that, hey, that's just weird.
Well, then that connects them to the story, right? Because now they have a piece of that person. And again, that then would say to me, is that person that bought that, what's behind their identity and things like that? Because why would you want murderabilia?
I don't know. That's insane. It's insane. I know a lot of people collect certain things. And I know that there was like collections of things like with famous people that have passed, like the Tupac Shakur BMW that went from, I think, like over $1 million or something like that. Insane, just because he passed away in it. It was crazy. But yeah, it sounds like Bryan Kohberger probably has some oil wells as well. What do you think drives people to want to be associated with serial killers like that?
Identity, association. Now, I guess it also depends. So wait, let me back that up a little bit, because you also need people like Dr. Ramsland and stuff that need to study people like this, so that even if we don't get exact replicas each time, it still helps us understand. Think about it, right? So we might not be able to use this stuff to point out somebody in our class and be like, oh, we need to red flag that person. You don't want that. However, what we can do is we could teach people who want to be parents in the future ways that you can, see red flags in your own child. Or even if we're not talking about somebody that's going to be a perpetrator, but even for anxiety or eating disorders or whatever the case may be. So that's how I think we could really help in the future, by studying the development of perpetrators. Does that make sense? More so than being able to pick them out of a crowd.
I got a question for you. This one is probably impossible to answer, but just kind of curious about your hypothesis on it. Do you think that if Bryan Kohberger wasn't caught, that he would have reached out to the media in some form or fashion, similar to like BTK or some of these other guys? So
that's a good question. In my opinion, and again, this is speculation, you guys, in my opinion, I would think that because he's in a program that he might want to, I don't know though, I would assume that he would want to step away from it so that he could be the professor that gives the story to his class, and then he really gets to be the arbiter of truth. Because in that case, if he is found guilty and he didn't get caught, I mean, what a better arbiter than truth than to be the perpetrator that's teaching your students. So I would think that for that reason, that would be less than smart to do. However, it's the ego. And if you guys look at my shorts, it's the ego that always messes and gets the person caught. So Dennis Rader, he wound up sending something through email and didn't realize, he literally asked the cops, if I send you this through email, will you be able to trace me? And they were like, no. So he sends it, and that's how they find him. So it winds up being something in the ego that all tripped them up.
Yeah. I think it was a floppy disk. He sent him a floppy disk of some sort.
Why would you ask the cops? Would you be like, of course they're going to say no. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's the simplest mistakes. It makes you wonder if they wanted to get caught. Maybe he wanted.
I don't know about that, because let me be honest, I'm extremely intelligent, but anybody that's in the chat knows that my nickname is Straight A Stupid. So I could graduate. I've graduated from multiple universities, which is different than, in my opinion, than just graduating from the same university multiple times. So I've been able to graduate summa cum laude, which is of highest honor, at multiple places. So, but that doesn't mean that my audio goes out and I freak out because I don't know how to fix it. So I'm using my daughter's laptop. Like, straight A stupid, just meaning like I get all of the big things. I get the hard things. It's the little things, like not knowing how to turn on my mic and camera, that trip me up.
Yeah, everybody has their kryptonite. Some people it's complex, some it's a mic and cam. It's about
knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at. I'm not great at everything. I never claim to be, but
right.
the things that I know that I'm good at, and whoever, it doesn't bother me if somebody says anything bad about it. I know that I'm a good instructor. I know that I know my shit when it comes to psychology, and I could debate that to anybody. So bring it on.
There you go. There you go. Let me play this last clip real quick, and then we'll talk about it.
And she was a psychopath. She has been analyzed by experts. So no remorse, cold, callous, manipulative. That's a psychopath.
Sounds like Bryan Kohberger.
I think she's talking about Eileen Wuornos in this one.
Yeah. I didn't go back too far on it. I should have gone a little bit further back. But the gist of it is that I wanted her to describe what a psychopath was. And I think it's on par.
Also, a psychopath, just so people know, that's not even a psychology term. So like when I teach abnormal psych and psychopathology, I never use the word psychopath other than to tell people this is what you guys know it as in society. It's really antisocial personality disorder, just in case anybody wants to look it up.
Yes. And this is where you can find this interview. I recommend going and listening to it all.
What was that 107? For some reason, I had 107 in my head.
107. That's one we just listened to right now.
Oh, we did. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was the one about 107.40.
Just get paid to talk to you.
Oh, that was it.
Yeah, it was the getting paid. I wanted to make sure that was out there because, that was one of the things that she wanted to highlight, that more than anything is that none of the people that she has worked with or written books with have gotten financial gain from her. Other people, that's a different story, right?
Well, and if Dennis Rader, if the proceeds on his part go to the victims' families, then what else could you really? She shouldn't be able to not write because she's a writer too. So she's not just a teacher; she's an author. So that is part of her identity, right? So, and she just happens to specialize in these types of perpetrators. So I could see why she would write about this. But on the other hand, I could also see why she wants to make sure that everybody knows that ethically that she is not trying to support the perpetrator, that she would support the victims. And that's why Dennis Rader's proceeds goes to the victims' families, at least, his portion.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. It's like I said, it's a double-edged sword. It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation in many places. Because if you go out there and you don't do this, you don't talk to these people, you don't get what the red flags are, then there's potentially a lot more victims out there.
Yes. I will just say real quick, I don't know what people are saying in the chat, but I see people saying, please be nice to our guests. Just so you guys know, I have an identity, so it doesn't matter. People could say whatever they want. I know who I am. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at, and I'm good with it. So you can have your opinion. That's fine. I'm cool with it. I have an identity. I'm not worried about it. I'm not too fragile is what I'm saying.
That's good. That's good. I'm in the same boat. I got some pretty thick skin. But believe it or not, there's a lot of people that don't like police officers. It's weird. I didn't realize they talk a lot of smack. Makes your skin real thick.
You're right. Especially the way I grew up, we grew up to not you did not call the cops, which is why I always thought that it wasn't weird that the roommates didn't call right away, because in my neighborhood, you didn't do that. That was the last resort. Was somebody getting hurt in the moment? And now we know that they were, but in order to call the cops, it's it has to be something big. So I get that, but at the same time, the cops are there to serve and protect, and we need to let them serve and protect when they're needed.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to answer some questions, guys. Yeah. If you guys have any questions, put a couple of stars in there. We'll go through these. Cleo Harper says, I see Dr. Ramsland as a witting surrogate for Bryan's mom. His relationship with his mom is the most practical. It makes sense. He'd be most comfortable with the same. Do you think that maybe perhaps he sees his mother in Dr. Ramsland?
So that's very interesting. Whoever said that, you would get candy if you were in my class. I throw airheads out at my students to get them to participate more. And the reason I say that is that we call this transference and countertransference in counseling. So and it happens to me often. I always say if I literally have 100 kids college students who don't have parents that consider me like a parent to them, but at the same time, I do have boundaries because I can't be a parent to 100 other people. I have 2 children of my own. However, I can be your mentor. I can be your professor. I can, you know what I mean? So I can do those things, but it's not uncommon for that to occur. So it wouldn't be uncommon if he did think of her as a surrogate mother type figure. I don't know that to be true. I'm just saying that that's not uncommon.
The defense also mentioned that he had problems taking clues of that, maybe confusing friendly things as romantic. Do you think that he could confuse maybe some of the grades or compliments on his grades as a romantic thing?
That's a good question. I would think more that if anything, it would, and again, this is my opinion, that it would fuel his ego tank more so than like a romantic tank, if that makes sense. So like it would feed more his desire to know that he's smart and that he can articulate and that he'd be a good addition to the field. Like, so that's where it would, I think he would soak it up more so than in like a romantic type thing.
Makes sense.
Because if he didn't know, right? If he wasn't able to know the distinction, then how would he know to even point that out? So I don't know.
Yeah. Even trying to be a rapper was somewhat delusional, in my opinion. What do you think about the fact that was that another form of him trying to find identity in music?
I'm so glad you say that. So it's also not uncommon for people in my area to do SoundCloud rapping and stuff. So, but I will say, if you guys want to look into what I think about it, I did a live on this and I did it line by line. And I tell you exactly, and I do it with a colleague of mine. So it's 2 psychologists that are looking at it and interpreting it. So, but I do think more so than being delusional, it was his way to articulate what he was feeling in the moment, and it almost like documented it, right? And one of the biggest parts of that song that gives me like the heebie-jeebies is when he says, "You might be evil, but I'm the devil." So to me, that's like, again, that grand delusion of grandeur. So it's like, I'm even the best at being evil, so I'm the devil. And in that same sense, right, what would be the opposite of that? I'm also a god, and I could take it, like, it's up to me. I'm the arbiter of who lives tonight and who doesn't. And that usually results from someone who has been humiliated in some way. Like if you're a narcissist and you're humiliated by someone else, or like made to feel small, whatever the case may be. Narcissists, although they appear to have delusions of grandeur, they're very insecure. So that would be a huge assault to like humiliate a narcissist. Whereas like right now, if somebody in the chat was trying to humiliate me, it didn't work. But if I was a narcissist, it might hurt my ego because I don't have a sense of self, right? In that case, I need to prove to you that you're wrong about me. So I'm going to lose 130 pounds. I'm going to stop using drugs. I'm going to get my degree. I'm going to be the best at what I do. And it's like, you're wrong about me. But then at some point, that no longer was filling his gas tank, if you will. And he winds up, if he is the person, takes it a step further. Which would be the complete opposite, right? Like the opposite of being small is to be God, right? So you feel a little, let's make myself big.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of valid points there. A lot of valid points.
Great show tonight, right?
I think so. Didn't I say that at the top of the show?
Yeah, we both did. I knew that this was going to be a great show tonight. And thank you so much for letting me add. I think I'm feeling more comfortable now with you and your following to add those psychological points, because they are important distinctions, right? So thank you for allowing me to have a place to do so.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for being on the show. I really do appreciate your expertise and your thoughts and your thought process. It's I think it's great value for sure. Sue Joy says, curious about consulting with his family members, has me confused. So I'm curious, if you were in a situation where one of your students committed a horrible crime, how would you act? Would you go and befriend his family? What would you do?
No, but I've had students that have died as a result of overdose and stuff. And I've had family members reach out to me and then keep in touch with me. So whether they thought that maybe as the psychology teacher, because I usually am of the teachers, the one that you would probably tell stuff to if you were going to tell a teacher, it's usually your psychology teacher, right? So that's not uncommon. So I would assume that in that same sense, if they could do that for like an overdose type thing that they might do that if they were in that situation as well. I wouldn't be surprised.
What if a student committed a crime like this and his family reached out to you? How would you handle that?
I would try to provide as much resources as I can. I would also let them know that as his teacher, if he's over 18, there's only so much that I really should or could be saying anyway. And I would also add that because I know them on that type of level, that I wouldn't want to be biased in what I think, because, right, if you think about it, a lot of these people are churchgoers, they're bodyguards, things like that. So if you're just going off of, you know, what it looks like on paper, they might look great on paper. So I would just let them know that I can give you resources to a counselor, to, you know, victims advocates, things like that. But I would definitely keep a boundary, and I would, because I would not want to interfere with justice or grieving or any of the things.
Music Lover Chicago says, maybe we need to better educate parents. Hey, parents, if your 27-year-old son's living with you, he buys a huge knife, and then some woman goes missing near your house, maybe do something.
I got to be honest, Music Lover, you're not wrong. So that's what I was saying earlier, is that we're talking about prevention here. So like I was saying, I think that validates what I was saying, right? So we might not be able to prevent in the fact that we're like, you're a red flag, but if we could teach parents how to parent, what works, what doesn't work. And a lot of times people are raised and they think that just because they turned out okay, that like let's say you were, you know, very authoritarian. So like you're all rules and regulations and no communication, you might have turned out to be successful. So you might be like, well, that's obviously how I'm going to parent, but that's not actually what we see the best results. The best results are when you have rules and regulation and communication. So not just tell the kid why you have rules, but explain why and answer questions that they might have as a result. So I think they're dead on.
Makes sense. Jeff H says, in BK Sisters movie, the killer says to the girl he doesn't suspect him as the killer, he says, relax, I'm not going to let anyone hurt you, kind of similar to It's Okay, I'm going to help you.
So there you go for the person in the comment section that wanted to call me out on that. Thank you, Jeff.
Casey Marie comes in with a membership for 5 months. Thank you, Casey. And we have Lollipop becoming a YouTube member. Thank you, Lollipop.
Welcome.
And thank you, Natalie James, for $49.99 super chat saying, I'm going to be bummed if he is offered and takes a plea deal. What do you think charges are? Do we get to see BK go to trial? As always, great show. DTS rocks. Thank you so much. I think we're going to trial. You know, I asked Steve if they've been contacted about the plea deal, and he says by law they have to. That tells me that he's not heard about it. And so I don't think, and he kind of alludes there that Bill Thompson's kind of grown a little bit of a back, not necessarily grown a back, but that's probably the wrong thing I'm saying. He said that he's gotten some tougher skin, maybe not so much in the beginning, that he may not have wanted to go down that road or something to that effect. And I'm probably
I think I can help with this. I think if you look at Bill Thompson's record, you'll see that he often will make deals. So I think people might have not Natalie, but just in general, like might assume, could that be in the works for Kohberger as well? However, I will say that going through 2 trials with my friend being unalived, I don't know what to say on the channel.
It's fine. You can say.
Okay. Well, my friend was murdered. So we went through 2 trials. The first trial, there was a hung jury. The second trial, they were found guilty on all 44 charges. So with that being said, I think it really just depends, right? And they would have had to ask my friend's parents about a plea deal. And to them, they wanted justice in a different way. So I do think Steve's right in that I think Bill Thompson knows that Steve wants to see this through. And by doing a plea deal, that then takes the death penalty off the table and stuff like that. So I think he wants to see this play out. And I have to be honest, I don't blame him.
Yeah, me either. I don't blame him either. And it sounds like that's not going to be an option for Bryan Kohberger. And with the death penalty now being struck 3 times, denied, the motions to strike the death penalty have been denied 3 times. It's going to be up. If he's convicted, he's going to be up for it.
Are they allowed to like push him in like the front of the line? Like, I don't know how that works. Do you?
No, he has his rights to his appeals and a bunch of other things.
But like,
Right
let's say
now,
all of his appeals all get denied. Like, do they go in an order?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay.
I wonder. I'm sure they do go in some sort of order. I think that once all their appeals get denied, there's like a specific amount of time that they have. Like once it's all denied, they say, "All right, well, here's your date," and then it's X amount of time away. But I think it just happens once the
Gotcha.
time the appeals are up.
That
Right
makes sense.
now, they're not doing executions in Idaho because of an issue with, I guess, getting medicine and stuff, and so they put a hold on it. But I think that they're trying to move the firing squad as the number one method.
It always like makes me like, what the heck? Like in the streets, like in Philly right now, like you can't even touch the trees and the poles. Like there's a certain part, not everywhere, but there's a certain part in the city. I just showed a documentary in my class that the city wipes down all of our parks, no matter where in the city, every single day. They're power washed every single day because fentanyl is that potent. So my thing is, we have all these drugs that are killing people that are just touching, the equipment in the playground. And then I thought about it and I'm like, wait a minute, if you're a pharmaceutical company, you don't want, right? That would be like half the population that almost, or half, if not more of the population that then would be like, oh, you put people, like you're part of this. So I could see why they don't want to be a part of that. But at the same time, I'm like, can't they use like the fentanyl that they get when they arrest people? I don't know. I feel like there has to be a different way.
Well, I don't know either. It's a touchy subject for one, I guess, for a lot of people because you're putting to death somebody, and two, you try to do it as the most painless way possible, so that it comes off as inhumane. I know a lot of people think that the firing squad is inhumane because it seems barbaric or whatever the case may be, but it's probably the least painful and the quickest method.
I was nervous about that for the people that would actually fire. And then I realized, again, straight A stupid, that they could probably have it automated in some way.
Yeah, they probably just pressing a button. And
Yeah, of course. I'm so empathetic. I'm like, oh, but what about the people that, because I heard like at first people were like, no, maybe they would have multiple people that, and like most would have a blank and that way nobody knew. And then I thought about it and I'm like, realistically, they could probably automate it at this point.
Yeah. It's definitely going to probably be that aspect. Human error. I mean, you don't want somebody to miss, and then that's going to be something different. You know what I'm saying?
Imagine that.
And so, but do you think that a lot of people? So he wrote when he was younger that he was highly suicidal. A lot of people say, why would he have committed this crime in Idaho, knowing the death penalty is there? Washington, it's not a thing. Do you think that could have been a reason why that he's like, screw it, if I get caught, I'd take me?
No, I don't think so. I think when it comes to suicide ideation, that it changes from day to day, let alone year to year. So even if he had suicide ideation when he was younger, that doesn't mean that he continued to have that as he got older, right? And my thing would be, if you're looking for that type of it would probably be, not better, I'm using the wrong word, but it would probably be in a situation where they call it death by cop. That's what I mean, that's just my guess. I'm hypothesizing on that one. There's not really
want to do it under his own control.
Exactly. It comes down to control and lack of identity.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you, Truth in Time, for being the newest member. Shannon Nelson comes on the $5 super chat saying, makes me think Ted Bundy and Ann Rule. I'm not familiar with Ann Rule. Who's Ann Rule?
I have to look it up too, but I'm assuming that if we're doing an association between him and Kohberger and his teacher, maybe she was somebody that interviewed him and stuff. That would be my guess. I don't know. So somebody please let us know. I'm just that was like my, if I'm using analogies, that's what I would think.
Yeah. And I think I'm caught up for the most part. I think there was just a few more.
Say No to Globalism gifted 5 memberships.
Boom. Thank you so much. Say no to globalism.
If you got a membership, say thanks.
Say thank you. Say thank you to saying no to globalism.
There you go.
That sounds weird to say. It's an awesome name. It's just it sounds like we're saying that.
Oh, you're welcome.
You know, I think it was thank you so much for joining. I think this was a great show. It was great having you back on. It was great seeing you. What do you have coming up? Any type of content that you're going to be putting on your show, guys? If you haven't seen it, it's The Minds Behind True Crime with Dr. Vona.
Yes,
Make
please
sure you go and subscribe.
Yes, and I'm not monetized, so that would be helpful. If I just want to make sure that people are educated and stuff like that on psychology, not on everything. I'm not a master of everything. But the other thing that I'm working on right now, and just because people are like emailing me about it, I'll just put it out now. I did a parody about all of my aunts from South Philly, and her name is South Philly Mare, and it's like taken off for some reason. I don't know, but I do have a fun side. So if you guys come across that, yes, it is me, and it's not really me, obviously, right? But it's a parody, but people are seeming to like it. So if you do see it, yes, it's me. I'm just going to say it now so I don't have to answer a ton of emails.
I'm fun too. You should talk about your Eagles with it too.
Oh, you know that I'm going to talk about the Eagles and the Phillies. Absolutely.
Well, make sure you go check out
right
both
state,
teams.
wrong team, Daniel. Right state, wrong team.
I don't know about that one. I like my black and gold. I like my black and gold. Well, make sure you guys go like, comment, subscribe. Like, comment, subscribe on today's content. Let's see where you're at. You are at 880 subscribers, so about
close. You're
getting close. About what is that? 120 more people to go. 120 subscribers to go. If we can get 120 subscribers over to the Minds Behind True Crime with Dr. Vona, I promise I'll be doing a live on her channel, and it'll be exclusive to her channel only. It won't be on the DTS show, so make sure you go like, comment, and subscribe over there. Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, share this content. I'm gonna be back on Sunday. We're gonna be celebrating little Rogan's birthday. She's 2 years old, and I want to thank everybody personally. Already. I want to thank everybody personally that has sent something. I do have a link in the description if you want to send her something. There's an Amazon link for her birthday on Sunday. Me, the wife, and my little one, we're gonna record a little something saying thank you to everybody, and then we're going to do a little live for everyone
I can't wait
to say thanks. So I appreciate everybody. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe, and go check out Dr. Vona's channel. That being said, see you guys next time. Peace out.
Thank you, everyone.